To debate this question, there are a few definitions that I think we should get out of the way. We will begin with the question of worldview, and this definition provided to us by philosopher Ronald Nash. A worldview is a set of beliefs about the most important issues in life, a conceptual scheme by which we consciously or unconsciously place or fit everything we believe and by which we interpret and judge reality. The other two questions I think are important to define with both the question of theism and naturalism, as they are an important part of the structure of the Theism Debate. Theism, these are definitions all drawn from the Oxford English Dictionary. Theism is the belief in God or gods as creators of the universe, intervening in it. And naturalism is defined as a philosophical viewpoint according to which everything arises from natural properties and causes, and supernatural explanations are excluded or discounted. And with those definitions underway, and I believe both our teams are ready to go, I wish the competitors good luck, and let us begin.
Alright, so naturalism. So first I want you to ask yourself these questions. Why is there something rather than nothing? As in, why we have this existence rather than just simply not existing? Where did we come from? Why are we here? And what is reality? What we try to use best to explain this is naturalism. So, a few specifics of naturalism is philosophical and metaphysical naturalism. Basically, it is saying that we should only be using natural means to be determining things, basically things like evidence. Like I'm saying that this table's here, I can see that with evidence, empirical evidence, and that is what we will base everything off of, rather than a supernatural cause. Then there is methodological naturalism, which is saying that we cannot rule out a natural cause for something because we do not yet fully understand all of nature. We're still working on that with science, and so we can't yet say that something is supernatural because we have not ruled out all natural possibilities. And that's kind of what naturalism would be based off of, is this idea of evidence for supporting all these things. Now, so, nature versus the supernatural. Some people would be claiming that we need a supernatural cause to be explaining things. But again, as I was saying before, we cannot jump to the assumption that a supernatural cause would be cause for the universe, because again, we have not proven all natural causes. We simply do not know. Neither side can make the exact claim. And there's nature should know signs of designer. Again, basically with all these points, even is there an unmoved mover or an uncaused first cause? Right? Again, with all these points, we cannot rule out natural means because, again, we have not fully understood. And Dan will be going further into this now.
So you pretty much gave you a brief introduction into naturalism, what it is, like the different kinds of naturalism out there. But ask yourself this question, why does it prompt scientists, over the past couple hundreds of years to adopt methodological naturalism and a philosophical naturalism instead of appealing to supernatural causes? And the answer to that is because so far naturalism has worked. It's been successful. If you take into account the historical context, if you think about cultures ages past who used to appeal to supernatural explanations for everyday events, for example, angry gods causing natural disaster and all that, such explanations have been historically replaced by natural ones. So, as I said, naturalism works, and there's been a trend, of whenever it used to be that whenever there was a gap in our knowledge, a supernatural explanation would be invoked. But the more we learn, the more those gaps of knowledge have been closing with natural explanations. So That's been the trend. And also, when it comes to the supernatural, the supernatural is something that doesn't obey our known laws of physics or laws of nature. It's already a challenge to test supernatural explanations. So that's why we tend to favor natural ones, because how do you test the supernatural? How do you test God? And today, we have an example of an area of science where we still don't know the answer, like the origin of our universe. Is our universe the only universe there is, or are there other universes out there that are part of a larger multiverse? These are still some of the mysteries of modern cosmology, and there are several constants in nature that are said to be fine-tuned by cosmologists. They have certain values, and so far it seems that if you tweak any of these constants, even by a little bit, like life as we know it wouldn't exist in the universe. There wouldn't even be chemistry as we know it. So the question has arisen, is this fine-tuning due to a designer, an intelligent designer, or is there a natural cost to it? And of course, many explanations are being proposed to explain this apparent fine-tuning. There's the multiverse, and we're just trying to figure out answers. And of course, God is still a possibility, but in reality, we just don't know what happened. And here's a closing remark. It kind of summarizes what naturalism does. Before you say something is out of this world, first make sure that it's not in this world. In the same way, before concluding that an explanation is supernatural, it would be advisable to first make sure that it's not natural. And that concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you for your Now the opening remarks for reasonable faith.
Hold on one second. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay, hold on one second. Is this working? Okay. All right, we're good. C.S. Lewis once remarked that if God exists, he is the most important topic around. If God does not exist, he is one of the most unimportant topics. Does God exist, or is the material universe all there is, was, or ever will be? The answer to this question has significant ramifications concerning questions of purpose and destiny. What would success for us look like? Success, in our opinion, is to show there are, in fact, more reasons to believe in theism than to believe in naturalism. In other words, that theism explains reality better. People often view the ability of science to explain things as a replacement for theism. However, this is not correct. It is not an argument to say, because science explains things that we used to explain supernaturally, theism is false. In fact, theism explains many things about reality better than naturalism does. The appearance of morality, come out next week for that one. The initial conditions of our life-permitting universe, the laws of nature, the fact that we can trust our reasoning, the existence of consciousness, and why there is something rather than nothing. For the moment, I'll focus on the reality theism explains the reliability of our reasoning better than naturalism does. Many people are amazed to learn that if naturalism is true, then your inner subjective self actually plays no role in what you say or how your body moves. If naturalism is true, then everything is predetermined by the laws of physics. It may strongly seem like you're choosing to say, I'd like a Big Mac to that McDonald's employee for some unique set of reasons. But however, reason has nothing to do with it. Your brain tells the whole closed causal story without ever making a reference to the inner you. The inner you is more like useless sparks flying off of a machine, i.e., they don't have anything to do with the machine's behavior. So even if all the consciousness in the universe suddenly ceased to exist, your brain body would continue doing what it always has. It would not blink. Atheist neuroscientist Sam Harris affirms this idea when he says that our wills are simply not of our own making. Thoughts and intentions emerge from causes over which we exert no control. If natural unguided evolution is true, which is necessary if naturalism is true, then there has been no adaptive benefit to having true beliefs or being rational. These things are invisible to natural selection, which only sees your brain-body movements. Philosopher of science Patricia Churchland has the following to say about this topic. Boiled down to the essentials, a nervous system enables the organism to succeed in the 4 F's: feeding, fleeing, fighting, and reproducing. I'm gonna get there real quick. Sorry, forgot I had this. Okay. Improvements in sensory motor control confer an evolutionary advantage so long as it is geared toward the organism's way of life and enhances the organism's chances of survival. Truth, whatever that is, definitely takes the hindmost. So, given naturalism and the fact that our beliefs play no role in these 4 F's, the likelihood that our beliefs and rationality are reliable is a black box. We'd be pretty lucky if they were anything to write home about. However, deep down we know we're not hopelessly irrational, which fits far better on theism, where our cognitive faculties were intelligently designed to reason and create beliefs that do in fact play a role in how our bodies move. Our subjective selves aren't just along for the ride. Theism explains this aspect of reality better. Let's take a look at another argument for theism, sorry. Yeah, not that one. Premise 1, we ought to give our instinctive human beliefs benefit of the doubt. Premise 2, belief in theism is an instinctive human belief. Conclusion, we ought to give theism the benefit of the doubt. So what does it mean to give an idea the benefit of the doubt? The Oxford Dictionary defines benefit of the doubt as a concession that a person or fact must be regarded as correct or justified if the contrary has not been proven. This means if this argument is successful, we must regard theism as correct until we're given reasons not to. So, do our instinctive beliefs deserve the benefit of the doubt? There are some very important beliefs we accept rationally and naturally every day that aren't scientifically supported. We simply give them the benefit of the doubt. Consider the following beliefs, like the external world is real. True or false, we are not all in the matrix. Moreover, we believe that other people and things exist even when they leave our field of vision. It isn't all a creation of our minds, like a dream with nothing to wake to. Can we get evidence for these beliefs that we have? Nope, because everything you could possibly experience as evidence against that belief would just be a part of the dream. What about the fact that our reasoning is reliable? We believe that we didn't come into existence 5 minutes ago with this unique set of memories and rational faculties we have. Can we get evidence for this belief without assuming the belief in the first place? Not at all, because any seeming of ours that we have evidence might itself have just come into existence 5 minutes ago. What about premise 2? Recent scientific studies show that belief in God is the natural state of humans since their youth. This means we have a very natural tendency to believe in God the same way we have a very natural tendency to believe these other rationally accepted beliefs. Consider a study that involved 57 researchers who conducted over 40 separate studies. The results are discussed in a recent issue of New Scientist, where the study's lead researcher, Dr. Justin Barrett, explains, whatever some people say, children do not need to be indoctrinated to believe in God. They naturally gravitate towards the idea. That such belief begins in childhood and typically endures into adulthood places it in the same class as beliefs such as the permanence of solid objects, the predictability of natural laws, that other people have minds, that the external world is real, and numerous others. If believing in God is being childish in the same respect as holding these sorts of belief, then belief in God is in good company. In his book, Born Believers, Dr. Barrett explains further that in order to function as sane human beings, we must give these views the benefit of the doubt until shown reasons not to. To do otherwise would damage our understanding of the world around us. So, we've seen reasons to believe that 1 and 2 are true. The conclusion follows. The God hypothesis, or theism, deserves the benefit of the doubt. It should be our starting position, just like belief in the external world and the reliability of our reasoning. Thank you.
All right, thank you. In analyzing reality to determine which worldview is true, the most important aspects are at the foundational level. So I will be defending 2 arguments for theism, one related to the origin of the universe and the other related to the laws of nature. My first argument will be the Kalam cosmological argument, which shows the need for a first cause of the universe. This is a deductive argument consisting of 2 premises and a conclusion that logically follows. And notice that neither Garrett nor I will assume theism in any of our arguments. Premise 1. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. This principle is the foundation of science, which is the study of cause and effect. If something begins to exist, then there must be a cause for it. Premise 2. The universe began to exist. By universe, I mean the totality of space, time, matter, and energy, everything physical. Advocates of this argument previously relied on philosophy, but now we also have strong scientific support that the universe had to have a beginning. There is strong observational and theoretical support that our universe began in a cataclysmic Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago. Although some scientists speculate that something might have preceded the Big Bang, a group of leading cosmologists has shown that there had to be a beginning to the overall universe. Quote, with the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Therefore, based on these two premises, we must conclude that the universe has a cause. Since the origin of the universe marked the beginning of space-time itself, we can deduce that this cause must be a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, and enormously powerful creator of the universe. Such a being deserves the name God and is certainly incompatible with naturalism. If all of nature came into existence, then it must have been caused by something beyond nature, something supernatural. Now, as scientists learn more about the beginning of the universe, they have been stunned by something else that is very surprising under naturalism, which leads to my second argument. Nearly all possible initial conditions of the universe would have resulted in a lifeless universe consisting entirely of black holes. Oxford physicist Roger Penrose computed the probability for our universe to begin in such a highly ordered state as to be life-permitting. He computed that it needs to be fine-tuned to 1 in 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123. Just writing out this number in standard notation would require more zeros than there are subatomic particles in the universe. Since these are initial conditions, one cannot appeal to evolutionary processes to bring them about. In addition, the laws and constants of physics have to be set within tiny ranges among possibilities in order to permit life of any kind. For example, consider the gravitational constant, which determines the strength of gravity. If this value is stronger by 1 in 10 to the power of 34, relative to the strength of other fundamental forces, stars would burn out too fast for life to evolve. If weaker by 1 in 10 to the power of 36, stars would lose material to radiation pressure. If stronger by 1 in 10 to the power of 40th, the universe would be so dominated by black holes that life would just simply not be possible. Physicists indicate that any of these outcomes would be life-prohibiting. This level of improbability is hard to grasp, so let me give you an example that might help you comprehend a number like 1 in 10 to the power of 36. Imagine that you have 1 grain of sand that is colored red. And imagine that you have a pile of sand the size of Eurasia that goes up to the height of the moon multiplied times 5. The probability would be to pick that one red grain of sand out of that entire pile. I think that this evidence strongly supports, there are many more examples of fine-tuning relating to particle masses and force strengths that are documented in hundreds of peer-reviewed articles. I think that this evidence strongly supports theism over naturalism, and I offer this argument by William Lane Craig. The first premise is that fine-tuning is due to physical necessity, chance, or design. Virtually no physicists think that the settings of the constants or initial conditions, though, are due to physical necessity. I mean, there's no underlying theory that forces all the constants to have particular values, and physics certainly never derives any of these values. Nor is the fine-tuning merely due to chance. And so from these two premises, we deduce that the fine-tuning of the universe is due to design. Thank you. That's all right.
I went over by like 15 seconds.
You have 15 minutes.
Thanks to both teams for their opening arguments. And now we'll begin the rebuttal from Ash. You have 10 minutes.
All right, one thing I want to say about trusting senses and trusting reasoning, one thing about that though is we still don't even know truly how the mind works, if I remember correctly. And one example I want to give, say you're completely sleep deprived and you're starting to have hallucinations. At that point, would you really want to trust your reasoning with that? You could be possibly, what you perceive could be very real to you, but could be something completely different to everyone else.
Matthew, I would like to point out a certain feature of the Kalam cosmological argument. I don't necessarily object to the universe, or at least this universe, having a cause, since it looks like all the evidence is pointing to this universe having a beginning. But following the third premise of the Kalam cosmological argument that the universe has a cause, and then you're trying to figure out what kind of entity would cause a universe. You argue that it would have to be a spaceless, timeless, and immaterial being. But if you look at what it means to be a spaceless, timeless, and immaterial being, those are properties that a non-existent entity would have. A spaceless entity that's never existed, a timeless entity that's never existed, a spaceless entity that does not take up space anywhere, it does not exist in any particular space, and an immaterial entity because it has no substance. So what you're proposing, the God you're proposing seems to be not so different from a non-existent God, and also when it comes to the fine-tuning argument, you brought up three choices. You brought up chance, necessity, and design, and the thing I noticed about your argument is that it's based on ruling out those two other options. And first off, what if there are other options out there that we haven't considered? And secondly, if physicists are appealing to a multiverse, isn't that a combination of chance and necessity? If we have a world ensemble where universes are popping in and out, and different values for these constants, are present in different universes, and of course, when we expect to find a universe that has the constants that we find in ours, and since such constants allow for life to arise as we know it, when the multiverse theory, be able to explain that, instead of appealing to a supernatural cause. And Garrett, okay. So you're appealing to God as an instinctive belief, but what about other instinctive beliefs that that have shown up throughout history? For example, it seems to me that most ancient cultures believe that the Earth was the center of the universe, and that the heavenly bodies revolved around us until science confirmed that this is not true, until people started observing the movements of the stars and concluded that that we are in the center of the universe. What would you say about instinctive beliefs such as those? Should we give those beliefs the benefit of the doubt or not?
Another thing I wanted to point out was I remember hearing from Garrett, you were speaking about evolution needing to be beneficial, mutations to be beneficial. One thing I want to say though is, while that is true, there could be other traits that go with that would be neither harming the species survival nor putting detriment to that species survival that can be also then carried with it. In that case, not all traits would have to be exactly beneficial.
Okay. I kind of want to build up on that. So you argued that under naturalism, our senses, there would be problems with our senses being reliable, and we should, under a naturalistic view, we shouldn't be really trusting our senses. But you argue that if under naturalistic views our senses would be there, and there would be no reason for us to trust them. There would be no reason for for our senses to develop so that they can perceive the external world accurately. But if consider, for example, being a gazelle and you have to deal with predators trying to hunt you down, wouldn't it be beneficial for the gazelle to have like an accurate perception of the world around it? For example, to be able to detect a predator before, or otherwise be the predator's meal. So aren't there reasons under naturalistic views for census to be accurate for a certain degree? But of course, I don't think either of us would deny that our senses are flawed, and that's the reason, for example, why optical illusions work, because sometimes our senses are fooling us, and appearances aren't always what they first seem to be.
Another thing, Garrett, that to be doing with the idea that a God is in everyone's mind, basically, for lack of exact wording. One thing that throughout history would be possibly prevalent in showing that is that throughout history, a lot of civilizations may not have understood the world around them, and so the best explanation they could have, since they really didn't have the technology and knowledge that we have today, would be a higher power, because they simply would not know any better. They really couldn't. They couldn't observe very well at that point. And as of recently, is whenever we've been able to get this kind of observational evidence that we can, be able to actually see that it wasn't a supernatural being. I mean, just only a few thousand years ago, Greeks were thinking, Zeus was the cause of lightning bolts coming down. But as we can show by science, that's not true. And many other bits of evidence like that, replacing a theistic viewpoint with a naturalistic viewpoint, after we've observed evidence of that, has been shown throughout history.
How much time do we have left?
2.5 minutes.
And okay, so Garrett, you're okay. Of course, you're arguing for theism, but how do you deal with the fact that you guys don't really have evidence for it, and you're arguing that theism is the best explanation? But how can you argue that theism is the best explanation if there isn't really evidence for God? Yeah.
All right.
Nothing more to say.
Excellent. So, this is Wolfgang, your rebuttal.
Okay. All right. So first, what I'll go ahead and do is I'll address the points they made towards my argument, and then we'll kind of go from there. The first thing is, I thought it was kind of funny how you use hallucination as sort of an objection to the fact like your perceptions can fool you, so they may not be reliable. The problem is, hallucinations are much too rare to use as an objection against the general reliability of our perception, right? On top of the fact that my argument was not our perception causes us to believe in God. And my argument was that because belief in God is instinctive, it deserves the benefit of the doubt. What I mean by that, like instinctive, beliefs that are instinctive are beliefs that we are predisposed to believe through our DNA, okay? Objections such as, we thought the world was flat, we thought Zeus shot lightning bolts down from the sky. Those were not instinctive beliefs. Those were beliefs that, while they did permeate society, they were deductively drawn. An instinctive belief, which these have not changed over time, would be like our reasoning is reliable. Thomas Nagel talks about how it's nonsensical to say that our reason evolved reliably because we're using our reason to say that. It's something that we simply assume. We are predisposed to believe like the external world is real. Things like that. We weren't just created 5 minutes ago with the appearance of age. And finally, on top of, concerning this, I guess actually, no, sorry, going back. If you assume naturalism and make the objection that our instinctive beliefs, in the way you said it, weren't reliable in a sense, isn't that kind of my first argument? My first argument is that if you assume naturalism, we should have all these false beliefs to the point to where we wouldn't even be able to tell if our reasoning was reliable. That's kind of the point. So I feel like if you're going to object to the second argument by saying that our instinctive beliefs are inherently unreliable, yet the same mechanism that gave us those beliefs was naturalism, that gave us the ability to reason, you're accepting the conclusion of my first argument in order to object to the second one by talking about instinctive beliefs being false. We don't have an instinctive belief to just believe in God. We have a predisposition towards theistic beliefs, so it could be like gods or God. Let's see. Okay, and then going to the fact that on my first argument you talked about, I mentioned our reasoning not being reliable under naturalism. So at first Matt said that there are more facets at work than just natural selection. I agree with that wholeheartedly. There are multiple things that are happening in evolution other than just natural selection. A few of those things would be something called pleiotropy, which means you can have a negative trait connected to a gene where that negative trait is also connected to a positive trait. So natural selection is unable to select for the positive trait because it removes the gene as best as it can because it's connected to the negative one. Another thing is genetic drift. If you have genetic drift, think about a flock of birds, and then 6 of them have this positive mutation that would eventually lead to them being more resourceful, more efficient in using their resources, so it will allow them to reproduce better, which is what natural selection wants. However, genetic drift says that, let's imagine that like a volcanic eruption wipes out that entire flock of birds. So you've now taken away natural selection's opportunity to pick for the most optimal system. So if you go to your gazelle example, where if you had false beliefs, then it wouldn't, obviously, like if it had a false belief and it ran towards the tiger, the animal you used. But,
same thing.
Yeah, the lion. If it ran towards it, it would obviously die very quickly, so true beliefs help. The 2 assumptions that you assume there is that natural selection is always able to select for optimal systems when it comes to the reliability. And the second thing is that optimal systems are rational ones. And we have no reason to believe that simply because a system is more simply because a system is more reliable than a different one, that it's necessarily more fitness enhancing. Because you can have systems like cognitive faculties, so the ability to think and reason correctly. You can have systems like that where you can think correctly, but it uses too much in terms of resources on the organism's part. Or you can have systems where they don't think correctly all the time, but they're more efficient at using the resources for the organism, and that would also help survivability. And you can have false beliefs that produce behavior that helps survival. So let's imagine this gazelle, right? And the gazelle, it was running away from the lion, for not because it thought the lion was going to eat it, but because it was really hungry going towards the grass on the other side of where the lion was, or something. Or it thought that the lion really wanted to give it a hug, and running away from the lion was the best way to get a hug from the lion. Obviously, the idea is that a gazelle doesn't make sense, but if you think about it like a human or a different type of creatures that think like humans, then you kind of run into that same issue. You can have false beliefs that produce survivability or behavior that enhances survivability of organisms. So that's it all.
All right. Well, Dan actually agreed that from the Kalam we see that there is a first cause, but he said that the idea of God being as a spaceless, timeless, immaterial creator of the universe is no different from nothing. But that is not what I mean by nothing. I mean the philosophical nothing. So take the phrase, nothing stopped the German advance in Europe during World War II. And someone says, oh, that's great, it was stopped by nothing. You see what I'm saying? It was stopped, and it was stopped by nothing. By nothing, then, I mean not anything. And so nothing in this sense has no properties. It has no causal power. And so you can't even say that it's spaceless or timeless. And for the fine-tuning, he said, what if there are other options besides physical necessity, chance, or design? And these 3 options are deduced from whether it's required or not, and so then we see whether it's physical necessity or not, and then we see whether it happened just by chance or if it happened not by chance. And so if he has other options, he can surely put them forth, but I don't see what else there could be between those three options. And so, from the evidence of the fine-tuning, the only thing he has to say is that the multiverse could give you more opportunities to make up the chance for this. But the multiverse also, interestingly, would also have to be finely tuned. So it only takes a step back. The multiverse, you could have a multiverse. Think of it as like a bread maker. If it kept making bad bread, you would never have good bread. It would keep constantly producing bad bread. So there has to be a mechanism for changing these laws and constants that we have no idea what that would be. Also, under the multiverse, we would expect that what would be created would be significantly smaller. Roger Penrose, as I quoted earlier, said that for his initial condition of the low entropy of the universe, that the multiverse is, quote, worse than useless. And so the multiverse itself has a great number of problems as well.
Also, to kind of wrap up a little bit, to talk about, you said that there's no evidence, so we're arguing for theism, but there's no evidence for theism, or how do you get evidence for theism, right? Theism, okay, supernatural worldviews or hypotheses, by definition, don't have physical evidence. So it's nonsensical to say, I'm going to disbelieve in God because I can't empirically test for him. That's assuming that the only type of good knowledge you can acquire is empirical knowledge, which that is not, philosophy and logic, which what we've been talking about today, the fact that we're presenting all different types of arguments to provide you knowledge is essentially showing that logic and philosophy are incredibly useful in providing knowledge, as well as empiricism is, or empirical tests.
All right. Ash, you have 10 minutes to rebut and closing statements.
Let's start off.
All right. So one thing I want to go off with it being supernatural. I want to kind of quote Christopher Hitchens. I believe it was Christopher Hitchens. That is. That can be claimed without evidence, can be dismissed without evidence. Because with a naturalistic point of view, if there is not evidence, then I don't see a very good reason to be believing in it.
And one thing about empirical knowledge, you asked like, is that the only scientific knowledge, empiric knowledge, is that the only like valid type of knowledge that one can have? Well, if you want to, you can believe in other things, like using other means other than empiricism and testing things. But to me, like empirical knowledge and scientific knowledge is another word for saying safe knowledge that has been tested, that has been challenged, and has withstood testing and challenge. So I'm not going to say that empirical knowledge is all there is, but for me, it's certainly the only type of knowledge. It's the only type of knowledge that I will accept, since it's safe knowledge, and I want to, I'm concerned of holding to beliefs that can be tested and challenged and falsified or proven to a reasonable degree.
Another thing with the whole I can't say the word. I'm sorry. I'm not even gonna try. I'm sorry. We could have that. Okay, that word. It could be. Well, what if that was wrong? Say that we had the predisposition. Thank you. So that could be wrong, such as, I know this is a really extreme example, and there's no way this going to be true, but just to give the point, say that we had thought that drinking, say, lava was good for us. Obviously, that would be a false one, and so just because we had the, I'm not even going to try to say it again. predisposition. Oh, there we go. Doesn't mean that it would exactly be true.
Keep going.
Also, another thing, again, I want to go to, this is probably more of a closing point on my end. For naturalism, again, we don't know everything kind of going like throughout history. We're just at that point where we're starting to have more and more knowledge about the world around us. And so we haven't quite ruled out all natural causes. And so as we continue to gain knowledge, we can possibly rule out more. But at this point, we still don't have all the knowledge that we possibly could. And so we really don't know for sure. So we can't rule out a natural reason.
And okay, so back to the gazelle example, Garrett. Like under a naturalistic scenario, for example, all the gazelles that hold false beliefs wouldn't make it, and the ones that do would survive. So natural selection, it's not a completely random process, and the features that do help the organism survive would carry on. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think you made the point that under naturalism, that there would still be some beliefs. We would still develop false beliefs and such. And for example, like I can appeal to for all the people out there who have claimed to have seen UFOs, ghosts, and things like that, which may be false beliefs. And we have there's many reports of supernatural instances which are probably not true. Yeah, I'm good.
All right. So, reasonable faith. You have 10 minutes to wrap up and be fine.
Can you go ahead and say that Christopher Hitchens quote one more time for me?
That can be claimed without evidence, can be dismissed without evidence.
Can you empirically test that claim?
Well, if by dismissed you mean withhold belief, then I would argue that claim makes sense.
Okay, so basically, it's a claim that says if you can't test for it, then you shouldn't believe it. You cannot test the reliability of that claim. That's the point I'm making. It's self-defeating. If you want, let's go back to my gazelle example real quick. Philosopher of science Stephen Sitch says that there are two assumptions that you accept when you say that natural selection or evolution selects for true beliefs. Okay? The first assumption is that evolution produces organisms with good approximations to fitness-enhancing systems. And then the second assumption is that a fitness-enhancing system is a rational one, or a reliable system. He says that natural selection is not the only process at work in evolution, right? I've already mentioned pleiotropy and random genetic drift. What that means is that if naturalism is true, the fact that if we can trust our reasoning means we're so extravagantly lucky if we can, right? If naturalism is true, that the probability of our reasoning being reliable, because there are so many opportunities for it to fail, for it to provide this ocean of false beliefs. And then let's go to the second thing where he says that an optimal fitness-enhancing system is a rational one. From the point of view of natural selection, it is plausible to say that one system is better designed than a second one if an organism having the first would be more fit, that is, be more likely to survive and reproduce successfully, than an organism having the second. A system is optimally well designed if it enhances biological fitness more than any alternative. However, he goes on to argue that reliable systems are not necessarily more fitness enhancing than unreliable ones. It is not the case that for any two cognitive systems, like S1 and S2, that that simply because S1 is more reliable than S2, S1 is more fitness enhancing. Okay? And the example could be, you can have a system that produces true beliefs, but it costs the organism too much in terms of resources. And then you can have a system, S2, that produces false beliefs, but in terms of behavior and resource use, it's much more efficient. So if we go back to the gazelles and we're pretending that they can think or whatnot, or just creatures with brains who can think, you said that if we think we can drink lava, and obviously we'll die if we think we can drink lava. The idea is that you don't need the true belief for lava will kill me to drink it in order to avoid lava. You can think that every time you see, let's pretend lava is really orange and bright, and every time you see a really bright orange color, you just run the other way, right? That's a false belief that would keep you from drinking lava, but behaviorally would also help you stay alive and help you reproduce. So if naturalism is true, and you have all these checkpoints where it would have to go through in order to get to genetic drift and pleiotropy, or there are a myriad of opportunities for natural selection to fail at giving us reliable cognitive systems, on top of the fact that at the very end, it may give us beliefs that are completely false that just behaviorally help, right? And that's the idea. That's the quote that Patricia Churchland's making. She's saying that natural selection is not concerned with the propositional content of our beliefs. It's only concerned with the behavioral adaptations of it. That's the point.
All right, this is our closing statement, right?
Yes. Okay,
so I guess I'll try to wrap up a little bit of what Garrett and I, or at least what I've said tonight. In the closing statement from the opposition, they spent their time talking about what Garrett had argued for. And so we see that both of the arguments I've provided, at least tonight, still stand. And from them, we see that the universe was caused by a timeless, spaceless, immensely powerful creator of the universe, and that it was designed. And so from these two conclusions, I think we can make a very solid case that theism is a better explanation of reality than naturalism.
my argument about the fact that theism is an instinctive belief, the only point made against it was that we hallucinate. And hallucinations cause us to sometimes think our instinctive beliefs are false. And hopefully I showed that simply because we sometimes hallucinate doesn't mean that on the whole our instinctive beliefs are false. On top of the fact that we give the benefit of the doubt to many different beliefs, like our belief in the reliability of our reasoning, the fact that the external world exists, that there are minds other than our own, and then when we all leave the room tonight, everybody's not just a fiction of your imagination. Those are beliefs. You believe that the laws of physics are going to hold up constantly. Like the roof isn't going to fall in on our heads at this very moment. These are beliefs that we're predisposed to believe because of our genes. We assume these things, and they haven't, essentially that hasn't been touched tonight as well. So theism should be the default starting position, and we should be given reasons to not believe in theism. Thank you.
First, let me say thank you to both sets of debaters. Very compelling and interesting debate. I'm sure many of you have questions, and so we'll invite you at this time to join us at the microphone over here, hopefully.
Hello, debaters. Thank you so much for this evening. That was really great of y'all. Thank you for giving of your times. My name is Rachel, and I am a part-time agnostic. So my emotions coming into this debate were, may the best man win. Obviously, I must concede the better debaters were the theologists. But at the same time, having better debating skills, being more verbose, having more flowing ideas, does this make you inherently correct? I think that your ideas haven't been put to the task in a proper manner. I don't have enough time to discuss everything, but I must ask, why do you hate on the multiverse? Because I happen to love string theory. I prefer my universe stringy rather than circular. I don't know about you. I have friends that like loop theory. They're a little weird. But why do you in particular prefer loop theory over string? Go.
as to why I guess I hate the multiverse, one of the biggest things that, for me at least, is that we have no empirical evidence for the multiverse, and under especially the leading theory of multiverse, we cannot have empirical evidence for it. There's no way we'd be able to tell anything about the universe or any of these other universes.
Much like we have no empirical universe for your God.
Well, I have deductive arguments for it.
And so do we.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Thank you.
Hello, Garrett. You speak a lot about beliefs. What is a belief, and how does it relate to truth?
Okay. So a belief is a proposition that can either be true or false. So whether it deals with, it corresponds to reality or not. So a belief would be like, does God exist, or God exists, right? I believe that God exists. So that can be true or false. Okay.
So a belief can be true or false. How does one determine the truth of a belief or the truth of a proposition?
Well, as a theist, I would say that the reason we are able to use reason to, basically we can create arguments and find out false beliefs from true beliefs is because our faculties were that mind is not a product of the physical, but the physical is a product of the mind. So that if God created the entire universe with us with intention or purpose and gave us these minds to use, then it makes sense that we can reason successfully, because we're essentially, I'm not going to get theological, so we'll just essentially, like, if mind is a fundamental component of the universe, then it makes sense for our minds for us to be able to reason successfully. However, if it's not, if mind is simply a product of the physical, the mechanism that gives us the ability to find false beliefs from true beliefs also gave us those beliefs in the first place.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll remind the audience, please, to keep it to one question.
This question is directed more to the proponents of the theist. I would just like to ask, I found that a component of your argument was revolved around probability, how it's very improbable that our universe, existing the way that we perceive it, could support life. How exactly does that suggest that there is a God? How does that suggest that there is design? I mean, if I flip a coin and it lands on its side, we all know that that's incredibly improbable, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there is a force that designed that moment to be that way.
Well, I'm looking at this deductively, and so the idea of the coin, though, is you have a much greater chance of putting it on this side than the idea that our universe will produce life. It pales in comparison. And sorry, what was the second part?
I want to know how this extremely low probability suggests that there would be a God.
Sure. So we have this low probability, and so we want to see, well then, how are we here then? So this low probability, and yet we have this fine-tuning. And so from that we can deduce that it's either physical necessity, chance, or design. And I think that I've showed that it can't be due to physical necessity or design. Or what did I say? Chance. Yes. Yes, of course.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
And so I'm not going simply from saying our universe is highly improbable, therefore God exists. That's not the argument I'm making.
Yeah, first of all, great job by all four of you guys. You did really good. I know it's hard probably being on the spot sometimes and stuff. I have a real simple kind of open-ended question for Dan and Matthew there. The theists, maybe you might disagree with the arguments, but they are giving like evidence or arguments in a form that you can, gauge and interact with and so forth. And I did hear a little bit on your side, but I wanted to give you more of an opportunity to present a case for naturalism. What is your positive evidence for believing in naturalism? Since this debate, which worldview best explains? I mean, it's somewhat, in my opinion, anyway, the the burden of proof goes both ways. You need to make a positive case for naturalism and for theism among the different debate teams.
So at least for now, I mean, we both the theists and the naturalists believe in the natural world. So for me, but also the theist asks us to additionally believe in something supernatural, something higher than the natural world. So if I were to believe in the supernatural as alongside the natural, I would ask for some sort of testable evidence for it, or figure out a way to test the supernatural. And if the supernatural by definition can't be tested, then how am I supposed to know whether or not it's real or not?
And on that topic, again, throughout history, the replacement of theistic ideas, ideas just gotten from theistic beliefs, are being replaced with these naturalistic ideas that we can prove with evidence. And so with that, there's been so many cases of that, especially with more recent times. I mean, you could even be put to death for not believing in some of these things. But now we know, of course, that isn't true. You're not gonna, stone one of us or anything. But I'm getting a little bit off topic. I'm sorry.
Let me ask you guys, just to reaffirm that question, if you had to summarize your defense of naturalism in two sentences, what would it be?
Like I said in my opening speech, so far it's worked. Naturalism has historically replaced supernatural explanations every step of the way, and as of right now, the only room that theism has, it's and where the gap in our knowledge lies. So historically, theism has always been introduced, where there are things that we don't yet know, and historically, naturalism has filled those gaps in our knowledge with naturalistic explanations. So naturalism historically has the upper hand, and theism doesn't.
A response?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So what Dan's describing is what's called methodological naturalism. It's not metaphysical naturalism when he says that science is showing things that we've used to explain supernaturally as false. So essentially, if that argument is going to be good, then what needs to happen is that every argument for theism needs to be a God of the gaps argument. It needs to be hey, look, we don't know how this happened scientifically, therefore God did it. Yeah, that's a great argument against those. However, I provided an argument tonight that says that's not the way it works. I'm saying that if naturalism is true, I have two arguments actually. If naturalism is true, the probability that we can reason reliably is so incredibly low that we're either astoundingly lucky, kind of like what Matt's saying, or what's much more expected is that if theism is true, then it makes sense. The fact that we can reason reliably makes sense. Or the fact that naturalism can say, oh, well, theism, it helps us survive and things like that, like theistic belief, going back to my second argument. And I would say that not only is the fact that we believe theistic naturally compatible with theism being true, but it's expected. If God existed, you would expect us to naturally have a disposition to believe in God's existence. So we're not saying that naturalism is false because of that. We're saying that when you're talking about what explains reality better, it looks like theism is explaining these facts about reality better than naturalism is.
Can I ask a question to Garrett about that?
All right, one quick question, then we got to get to the audience.
Okay, so if you have an intelligent being who implanted in us this natural tendency to believe in God, then how come throughout time people have been believing in so many different gods? Both of us are atheists to so many different gods. You're atheist towards all the gods that all these religions have provided, except for one, and we atheists don't believe in any of these gods, including the one you believe in.
A quick response. Okay, well, I'm not making any assumptions theologically about the type of God that we're arguing for concerning that. Polytheism, basically, we're saying that scientifically it's shown that we naturally believe in an agency outside of the natural world. So one of those is God, the other one would be gods.
Yeah.
So they all are encompassed in that. It's like a supernatural or theistic type belief goes along with that. It's not just monotheism, but that's still a problem for naturalism.
Sir?
Yeah, this is a question for the Ash Society. Concerning the fine-tuning argument, the options were necessity, chance, or design for the fine-tuning for life, and you said maybe there are other options. I was wondering if you had any other options that would be available to explain the fine-tuning for life.
I mean, I'm not aware of other options, but what I said, what if there are other options? I'm just invoking the possibility of there being other options. That was all.
All right, sir.
So I'm thinking now about your main argument here that naturalism works. And it's a little confusing to me because if theism is true, at least the traditional theism, that it was the theists historically that decided to employ methodological naturalism because they believed that God created the world in a way that was governed by laws. And so it was historically theists that went into the world expecting science to work. It grew out of that soil. So if theism is true, science would be working just like we see it is. Now, if naturalism is true, you might say the same thing. You could make arguments against that. But the point is, in both of them, science would work. And I don't understand why science working supports one when they both predict the same thing.
Well, what I argued was that, historically, naturalistic explanations are the ones that have worked, and supernaturalist explanations have not worked. And let's say that it used to be the theist scientists who started studying the world, but historically, but nowadays you have atheistic science. The majority of scientists are atheists because it seems that historically, applying the methods of science has led us more towards naturalistic explanations instead of supernatural ones.
Okay, so can we talk about that? Okay, I wholeheartedly agree the fact that science provides natural explanations. Theism expects that. Theism says that if we use methodological naturalism, if I throw a ball across the room, I should not employ the existence of God carrying it from my hands to hit the wall, right? Using methodological naturalism, it works under theism and naturalism. So it's not an argument to say because science works, and there have been some theistic, reasons in the past, we can just say that theism's false. It's not an argument against theism to say that there have been bad arguments for theism in the past.
Quick response?
Well, I'm not really discounting theism on the basis of that. I'm just saying that, historically, naturalism has held and theism hasn't. But I'm not saying that this is evidence against a God or theism in general. I'm just telling you what historically has happened. Theism, every time a theistic explanation has been offered, it has not made it.
Right, so it's irrelevant, is what you're saying.
Well,
Quick
it
answer
was
to the
relevant
history
to answer his
question.
question.
Okay, just wanted to establish that.
Hello. This is for the Ash fellas. During your second speech, I believe it was, you stated that you believe only in empirical knowledge. Is that correct?
Yeah, I try to. That is my objective. I'm not saying that I'm always successful at that, but that is what I strive for.
But like you're saying that you accept the validity of empirical knowledge and not other types.
I'm still open to the possibility of my senses deceiving me, but the way I see it, I'm just trying my best. And
well, basically, my question here is, how do you feel about things such as mathematical knowledge, which is like inherently empirically untestable? Like I could say, for instance, there are an infinite number of prime numbers. No mathematician would contest that statement, but it is in principle impossible to empirically test, like, oh, yep, I found all of them, it's infinity. How do you feel, like, basically, how do you respond to the existence of that sort of knowledge, which is necessarily unempirical, but sort of like it's logical knowledge, sort of true knowledge that you can reason to?
do you want to answer?
Well, one way, I remember this being brought up in like a tutoring session like a few weeks ago, actually, funny enough, that really with numbers and all sorts of things, like including prime numbers, it's a way of we perceive things like, say there's still one water bottle. I can still call that two, but it would be still, one water bottle. But the way we perceive numbers and everything in math is just that. It's the way we perceive it, but it doesn't change how it is. I'm probably losing my wording here. I'm sorry.
And also, I would ask you, like, what are numbers used for? Numbers are, they've been used as a way for us to describe the natural world. For example, I could use the number 2 to describe, 2 fingers, or it could be like a unit of measurement, 2 meters. So okay, so there being prime number, an infinite list of numbers, that just seems more of like a concept that could be useful as describing reality. But then the question rises: do these numbers like actually exist, or are they just like useful concepts that we use to describe reality? So I mean, if you're asking me if like how do I know that there's like an infinite list of numbers, I'm just saying like, do numbers actually exist, or are they just like useful tools that we use to describe reality?
You have something you wish to add?
Yeah. So I think his point was that mathematically you can use infinities. Like infinity is a thing that you can't test for in the actual world. So he's not saying that numbers inherently exist and that like don't inherently exist or something like that. He's saying that mathematically you can use infinities, and since infinities don't exist in the actual world, that can be a problem. Like how do you come to knowledge if the only type of knowledge you can acquire is empirical knowledge, which, just want to point this out, making that claim is not an empirical claim. So you're using logic, like the existence of logic, things like that. How would you show empirically that logic exists without assuming the existence of logic?
Well, I didn't really state that empirical knowledge is the only knowledge that you can have. I just said that it's the kind of knowledge that I prefer because it's safe knowledge, it's testable knowledge, and all that. So
I think we've established that distinction. Sir?
Well, I have to apologize for only directing a question at one group, although both groups I'd like to thank for your arguments. For the Ash group, as I understand it, the primary grounds of your argument is that physical explanations have tended to replace supernatural explanations. And that's great because it prevents the theist group from employing a God of the gaps type explanation. So thank you for doing that. The conclusion you drew from it, though, as evidenced in the final slide of your opening argument, was that the preponderance of natural explanations rules out supernatural explanations. Now, that might be true, but it might also not be true since there are all kinds of causes. For instance, I couldn't get you all to give me the same answer if I ask you what is the cause of scrambled eggs. Some of you will give me a material cause, some of you will give me a final cause, like because they are yummy and they have to exist. So could you give me some warrant for believing your argument that that conclusion follows from your grounds?
So let me get this right. You're asking me like, can I give you like any valid reason why there is no supernatural?
No, why there could not be natural and supernatural explanations for the same phenomenon or entity.
Well, yeah, like quoting Carl Sagan, yeah, the only sacred truth in science is that there are no sacred truth. So you are free to challenge that assumption, against against there being supernatural causes. You're free to challenge that. It's just that so far, supernatural causes haven't, been necessary to explaining anything about reality.
Does it warrant a response? It was an answer to a question. You've gotten your chance. We'll get back to you.
This idea has been touched on just a little bit, but it didn't go the direction I wanted it to go, so I'm going to rephrase it. We keep talking about the idea of science and being tested. Here's my question, though. Evolution is still a theory. It hasn't been proven. Most people believe in it, but that word goes with my statement. It's a belief. Believing in something that hasn't been tested yet is kind of faith. So why is it okay to believe in some things, but not in the idea of a divine creator? It's still a belief.
Oh, that's right.
Do you know what a theory is in terms of scientific terms? A theory is something that supports evidence that is given. So basically, the theory is used to explain that evidence and how that evidence came to be. So to say it's a belief, I'm sorry, but that's pretty much false.
If you want to allude specifically to the example of evolution, evolution is a theory, but meaning that evolution is a well-substantiated explanation, to explain what we observe in the natural world. For example, to explain, all the fossils that we see in the fossil record showing showing transitions over time or showing change over time, like how species share a common ancestor, how over time, species evolve into other species. So actually, the evidence for evolution is pretty overwhelming, and you don't even have to appeal to the fossil record. You can appeal to modern genetics. For example, the evidence showing that we do share a common ancestry with the other great apes. It's already attested, by genetics.
I just want to point out that leaders in the theory of evolution.
Make this quick,
of
because
the
we are going
world-
to do one question per person.
All right. Leaders in the theory of evolution for the world have stated that there is no evidence. It's all based on. If you don't believe me, go look this up. Dawkins, I believe, is one of the leaders in the theory, and he has said there is not actual evidence. They're still trying to find it.
My short answer to that is you're wrong.
Yeah. A chance to respond to the wrong or rightness of that from...
I want to just point out, for the purpose of this debate, we assumed natural selection. I used it in my argument, so...
Please, next question.
Well, natural selection is part of the larger...
We have someone waiting to ask a question.
Okay, my bad.
Great job tonight, guys. I just think it's interesting how we're talking about probability and reality and things of that sort. And my question is directed towards the Ash guys. I just want to know, if we're talking about probability, you believe in the Big Bang Theory, is that correct?
I think we all here believe in the Big Bang Theory.
Okay. Well, I'm just wondering what the difference is in belief in the Big Bang Theory as opposed to creation. Because to me, I see the Big Bang Theory is likened to throwing a stick of dynamite into a dump and creating a Porsche. So basically, if you're looking at that, that takes faith in itself to believe the probability of that in itself creating such a perfect universe. Like these guys were talking about how the stars, if they were one, whatever off, they would be non-existent. So I'm just wondering, what's the difference, would you say, in believing in the Big Bang Theory as opposed to having a divine creator specifically creating the creation for a purpose?
Well, you can look at the claims of creationism versus the claims made by proponents of the Big Bang Theory. The proponents of creationism, for example, is in young Earth creationism, that the Earth is 6,000 years old. They have no evidence for that, and all the facts that we know about modern geology, biology, cosmology, ghosts, works against the notion that our Earth is 6,000 years old, or that, and it all supports cosmology, as in the Big Bang Theory, modern geology, that our Earth is around 4.6 billion years old and all that. So I would say that, the Big Bang Theory has a ton of evidence going for it versus creationism doesn't.
You have a quick response to that?
No, we're Big Bang proponents.
I thought we agreed on that. Okay. Welcome back, and I will remind you one quick question. And then...
Okay. As I said earlier, I am actually not an atheist because I've got some belief in me. I believe in infinities. I believe that we are emergent beings. I believe that in our massive neurons we have a consciousness, whether this is a soul or whether this is something that is just us. We are more than our collective parts. I also understand that evolution is a thing. We have dogs, we have wolves. Why can't we have apes and man? Why is evolution such a dirty word?
Why is evolution such a dirty word? Who is this directed towards?
Really, we are higher beings than animals, though some may contest that, given that they have empathy, but...
We'll give both sides a chance to answer that.
Yeah,
Why
I just wanna
is
set
or
the record
is
straight.
evolution a dirty word?
We are proponents of the Big Bang and evolution. So,
Okay.
I used it in my argument. He used the Big Bang in his.
I assume you have no objection to the dirty wordness of evolution.
Yeah.
In the interest of...
Actually...
It's just as that among Christianity. or just among your fellow theologists, why is this such a problem? I just wondered if perhaps you'd talked to them enough to understand them.
I believe they answered that question. If you have something you'd like to add.
I would not like that.
All right, well, thank you again.
Hello. So from my understanding, the multiverse theory, we wouldn't be able to gain any knowledge of the multiverse or other universes. Whereas if we go by the theism idea and there was a god or gods, we would be able to determine things about them based on their influence on the world. So, for my opinion or understanding is that the multiverse theory doesn't really help naturalistic arguments because we won't be able to determine anything about it if it did exist. So I kind of want to know the opinions on that.
Well, if God did exist, how can we determine anything about it?
Well, I mean, if we go by, I'm a Christian. Okay.
Again, one question, and we'll give them a chance to respond.
Sorry.
So, yeah, of course you can.
I like to say that we can know a lot about God, and it's present in largely my first argument that God is spaceless, timeless, immaterial, immensely powerful. These are all things that can be deduced from this argument. So I think we know plenty of things.
Another defense of the multiverse?
Well, should I just address this question, or is it okay if I address
Both or either. Let's do it.
Okay, so he deduced, from the Kalam cosmological argument that God is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial, but that's assuming that, only spaceless, timeless, and immaterial beings can create, space-time matter. What if God is, what if there was something, what if the cause of our universe was actually space-time, had space-time and matter? I don't get why it's necessary for the cause of our universe to be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial.
If I may.
Please, real quick.
Well, the Big Bang, as I said earlier, marked the beginning, actually, of space, time, and matter itself. And so, for it to begin to exist, whatever caused it has to be outside of it. It cannot be the same thing that it caused.
I would agree with you. It would make sense for it to be outside, but what if it exists outside our universe, space-time matter, but it has its own form of space-time matter? If there's a multiverse and other universes exist inside this multiverse, wouldn't those universes have their own form of space and matter, or maybe even their own form of time, separate, different kind
You have a final
from
answer?
our own?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm done.
Okay, I was going to say. Let's wrap this question up. You have a rebuttal to that?
Not really.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to say that it seems a little bit nonsensical to say that other universes or space-time matter exists outside of space-time matter. I would be like, why couldn't other types of space-time matter exist? I think that's sort of a misunderstanding of the definition of space, time, and matter. So, the fact that space, time, and matter came into existence with the beginning of our universe, that means that space, time, and matter doesn't exist outside of our universe. I mean, that's the whole, there's a gamut of, scientists talk about this all the time, but there's maybe like a quantum field or something that you're going to point to, but that's not space, time, or matter.
Sir?
I'm glad you guys brought the Kalam up again, because that's what my question goes to. Matt, you said when you were going through the Kalam that this first cause has to be spaceless, timeless, immaterial being. I don't see how the being part of this necessarily follows from the premises here. What makes this spaceless, timeless, immaterial force that generated the universe all that different from this force that created the universe under multiverse theory? And why do you assume that it's a being?
Hey Charlie, are you saying that what's the difference between the multiverse as opposed to the immaterial, spaceless, timeless idea of God?
I'm saying, why does he assume that this causes a being?
Why does it presuppose a being?
Why is that? How does that build upon the premises?
Well, the only things that we know of that are spaceless, timeless, and immaterial are things such as abstract objects like numbers and the mind. Abstract objects like the number 7, for example, has no causal power, and so the only thing that leaves us with is a mind, is a being.
Actually, what about non-existent entities when they're also spaceless, timeless, and immaterial? So that's another thing we know, that is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial.
Okay. There is no such thing as a non-existent entity.
Yeah.
That is a misunderstanding of what the term non-existent means.
Yeah.
Non-existence means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So that's like me saying that square circles exist. They don't.
But yeah, my point is, in other words, something that's spaceless, timeless, and immaterial, it could be nothing. I mean, we can talk about semantics all you want, but I mean, I'm sure you get the point of what I'm trying to say. You know.
All right, sir.
Okay. Earlier in the discussion, a couple of the ASH people spoke about their own personal views on empirical induction, the method, the scientific method of how to acquire knowledge, and the reasonable faith people talked about deductive logic and things like that. What wasn't addressed, which I'd like the reasonable faith people to answer, is their personal views of the role of revelation in acquiring knowledge from their particular theistic perspectives. What credence and what role would you give to the role of revelation in acquiring knowledge?
What do you mean by revelations?
Revelation from supernatural entity.
Right. So, what is our opinion on how revelation comes to us as in our like?
And what role does it play in your acquisition of knowledge and your attributing of that to acquiring beliefs and knowledge? Do you understand the question?
Yeah, I understand the question. One moment. Well, I would say that as a theist, I don't go around saying God told me this. Or what I do as a theist is I believe that the existence of my mind and the reliability of my reasoning allows me to inductively and deductively come to conclusions that can be correct or false. But the idea is that they're reliable, so I can do. The fact that I can come to correct conclusions is good. So I mean,
as a Christian, I know you're a Christian. I wasn't speaking so much as direct revelation from God to you. I'm talking about through the scriptures.
Okay,
What's your
Christianity?
Yeah, from your. I was talking about from your particular theistic perspective, rather than because naturalism is a particular philosophical perspective, whereas theism is is a category of a whole bunch. But you personally have particular theistic perspectives. What's the role of divine revelation to you, particularly in acquiring knowledge and beliefs and things like that?
Oh, you're not gonna like this answer, but it's actually off topic from the topic of the debate. So I don't want to get too far off because I'll end up talking about my entire gamut of theological assumptions.
Trying to limit this to a quick
I
answer.
wanted to talk about theism versus naturalism, and that's about Christianity. So that's a different debate.
No, I'm talking about revelation.
We're limiting the questions from folks, and so is there a different answer you're expecting? Or, all right, sir.
Yes, I would just like to point out that I don't remember exactly who asked this question earlier, but it was essentially about why we assume that this spaceless, timeless, matterless thing is a being. I would like for both groups, I know it's going to be a little bit challenging for the humanists because, well, the nature of said belief, whatever, I'll just ask the question. Could you please define God and justify why that definition is valid?
Who wants to start?
Hold on. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Please define God and justify why that definition is valid.
Can I
So,
offer-
for example, as opposed to a force, a being, why is it a force? Or a being, does it have intent, does it not? Things like that.
Ash?
I mean, from what I've heard, from Christian apologists who try to find God, God is, the greatest conceivable being, greatest conceivable whatever force being. And, you know, that's a definition I would like to offer for God.
The greatest force of being, is that what you said?
The greatest conceivable, maximally great.
The second
something.
part of that question was a justification for that?
Well, I mean, I don't have a justification. I just have an answer for a definition.
All right.
Well, to a degree, we've sort of explained a little bit of that tonight. There is a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, immensely powerful. I'm not going to go with the maximally great or anything like that, but a logically coherent. The list goes on, but a typical monotheistic definition is going to be like a single God that's immensely powerful, immaterial, is in essence a mind that can have causal relationships to other things. So, and hence him bringing in, or him just for the sake of the argument, bringing in the existence of the universe. Does that make sense?
Essentially, what I'm gathering is that the monotheistic definition of God, as per my question, would be a omnipotent being, a mind that structures reality.
Yeah, it's going to be like an omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent type being. So.
Okay.
All right. Sir.
Yes, I actually first have a comment on natural selection, and I just want to say that it is not a rational process. It is actually an optimal process for reproduction. And one of the examples that can be given for that is the birth rate among theists versus atheists. One can therefore argue that given the fact that there are certain memes that theism incorporates within its worldview, which is more conducive towards natural selection, which is why theism has been perhaps embedded into human genomes, and our tendency to be more spiritual and magical and mythical, whereas atheism is not. Thus, therefore, I would argue in favor of what you call, yes, that natural selection happens in nature, but it is not a rational process. So blind chance makes these ideas become popular. They don't have to be necessarily correct ideas. So,
And your question is?
my question is about the traditional monotheistic argument for God incorporates the idea of omniscience into it. And that entails that God knows everything and God is fundamentally immutable. You're under that presumption, and notwithstanding the ideas of compatibility, there is no such thing as free will. So when you argue against naturalism, and you argue that there is no free will under naturalism, and therefore it's a self-defeatist proposition, one would argue that that's essentially the same thing with monotheism. The omniscience and immutability of God basically makes it impossible to have any kind of free will. Conversely, if you assume that there's such a God would have free will, then you're actually begging the question. And if you're going to beg the question, one can equally argue that simply by necessity of the existence of, or the importance of free will, you could actually assume that quantum fluctuations allow for that to exist in the world.
Again, the question is...
The question, of course, being that how do you, is it, well, I guess I'm asking, is it not the case that you're begging the question that there is inherent free will under traditional monotheism?
Can there be free will, I think is the question.
Yeah, basically, whenever you say that because of the knowledge, omniscience of God, causing a problem for the existence of free will, there are actually multiple different views on that. There's Arminianism, Molinism, and Calvinism. So the fact that he's presenting one side is kind of inaccurate, on top of the fact that I agree that evolution isn't necessarily a rational process, and there's scientific evidence showing that no matter what type of home you're raised in, you have a predisposition to theism. So the fact that theists are the ones, and that's the reason that theism is winning out, is simply because there are more theists having babies, is not true. There is scientific evidence saying that that is incorrect.
We'll give Ash a second to respond to that answer.
Well, it looks like we don't have anything to contribute to this.
Can I just quickly ask? I mean, my question was directed.
One quick follow-up. Yeah.
Reasonable fit. I'm simply asking a question. Tell me how you're not begging the assumption of free will under traditional idea of monotheism. I understand that, for instance, William Lane Craig does not agree with the idea of immutability of God or divine, timelessness.
Okay, I'll go ahead and answer that. Basically, Arminianism, in a word. So I don't have time to go spend 3 hours to define Arminianism for the audience. So, but I'm just going to go ahead and say that. And if you would like to look into that more, you can come talk to me after the debate, or we can look into Arminianism together.
But are you assuming it, or are you going to?
I think at this point, the question's been asked. Okay, that's their answer. Sir.
Hi. I'd like to ask a question now to the other side. I will get to it very quickly, I promise.
Thank you.
First, in mathematics, when you derive something, the truth or the authority of what you derive is only as valid as what it came from. In the same way, Science is derived from philosophy. It's built on philosophy. It is a philosophical method, actually. So when you say that you trust in empirical evidence the most, I don't understand how you can say that to you, the empirical method is more trustworthy than the foundation of it, which is philosophy itself. Can you explain to me why you can trust more in something derived than in the thing itself?
Well, I mean, like I said, empirical knowledge, it's knowledge that's been tested, and I mean, I don't think I understand your question, and I feel like I've already explained myself.
Can I talk about that real quick before we end it?
I think the question was directed. It was directed at them. So, yeah, agreeing with the questioners is a separate thing.
Am
Sir,
I the last question?
Last one, yes.
Hey,
make
awesome.
it good.
It's gonna be great.
Thanks.
Hey, you're welcome. Just real fast, since I'm the last question. Philosophical, not really physical thoughts on the idea of the multiverse and how that kind of coincides with theistic beliefs. Like this, the cosmological argument says that since universe is all of space, time, and matter, cosmos be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Other universes, beings can be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Are there entire universes filled with gods?
Please.
Awesome. So how does the idea of the multiverse, if it exists, coincide with theistic belief?
Mhm.
I actually say that if the multiverse does exist, it doesn't impact theistic belief at
Okay.
all. So, and the reason why, is because one, the scientific argument that the BVG theorem would say that even the multiverse would need a beginning. Okay, so that's like a scientific reason for even, essentially, if you want to use the term they use, the unmoved mover, right? I could just push that back a step if I wanted to do that, or I can not base. I can just. Are there are there philosophical reasons for belief in God in the first place that don't hinge on scientific assumptions or the current scientific consensus? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Did you have anything to add there?
Not really.
All right. Well,
okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, you were in line before, so now you get to be the real last question.
This was the question that he was going to ask, but I think I may be able to ask it in a more understandable way. Can I try? Can I try?
I don't know yet, but I'm anxious to find out.
Okay.
This is
Charlie,
the last one, so we'll wrap it up.
Okay. So something that he was saying earlier is that if we have a type of knowledge or a way that we use to interpret knowledge like math, which we can't really test, but is our foundation for understanding things like empirical evidence, then if empirical evidence is derived by something that we can't test, by like mathematics, then how do we know that the foundation for empirical evidence is true? How do we know that empirical evidence is true?
How does epistemology explain empiricism?
Sorry, what you say?
How does epistemology explain empiricism? Am I understanding the question?
Yeah, I think that would probably say it. Like,
All right, well then we'll let both groups end on that question then.
Okay, so when you said that we can't test mathematically, do you have any particular examples in mind of instances where we can't test it?
Well,
1 + 1.
Like, since it's not, like you were saying how we depend mostly on stuff that we can test as knowledge, and if we use something outside of that, you would try to stay away from that. So, like, you prefer to choose only testable knowledge?
Yeah.
So, like, if we rely on something that's untestable to explain something that is testable, how do we know that it's true?
Well, I just heard Garrett mumble 1 + 1, when I asked for an example of something that you can't test in math, but actually, if you have, for example, one water bottle and I bring in another water bottle, how many water bottles do I have in total? It seems like in cases like, the example Garrett brought, I can test math, and I'm just asking you to, give me an example of something in math that I can't test before I answer your question.
I have no idea if you just answered my question. Sorry.
Okay, so first I'm going to use your example. That's not testing math, that's assuming math. He's asking, how do you test for math without being able to empirically verify it, right? So when you say, hey, look, I've got 2 water bottles, and that equals 2, right? You're using math to try to represent it in the physical world. The idea is that there are mathematical concepts that do not exist in the real world that we can't represent at all. So in theory, I mean, they're essentially all, if every human on the planet died today, would the fact that 1 + 1 = 2 stop being true? Or, I'm sorry, even if the whole universe just like disappeared, would that stop being true? I mean, it's like it's a mathematical truth. They work for, right? I don't know why I'm reaching Charlie Bell. I'm used to doing that, sorry.
A final defense of math?
Well, I mean, first off, the question of like, will it stop being true if the whole universe ceases to exist, or if there isn't anybody around? Like, honestly, like how am I mean, I don't see how anybody could like have an answer to that question. But anyways, but isn't mathematics, a way for us to describing the natural world? For example, like if you have like all these mathematical models or equations in physics, are they not like a different way? I mean, are they not like a way for us to describe what actually happens in nature?
Are you asking me, or are you?
Yeah, I'm asking you. For example, if I have the equation, there's the equation of motion, like F = m times v squared over r, something like that. That's that's like the equation of motion. Isn't that a way for me to describe reality? So.
I think that math is descriptive, right?
Yeah.
So you represent things in reality using math, but the idea is that if reality as we knew it, not reality, but like the physical reality as we knew it, I guess whenever I was making that claim, I was thinking more of like logical laws, like the law of non-contradiction, like would that stop being true if our universe stopped existing and things like that. So yeah, I mean, and that can't be answered. I mean, obviously not. Like law of non-contradiction is going to hold up no matter what in every possible world. So it's things like that.
All right. Well,
well, if we both
we're going to have to stop it here eventually, because obviously we could do this for quite a while. Thank you to everyone who came out to see the debate this evening, and thank you to all. And thank you to the debaters as well. An excellent job. Thanks for spending your Friday evening with us. Again, I was honored to be here, and have a nice night.